Uh, Thank you very much. Welcome to my talk. My name is Meshreki. I would like to present our recent work on modeling vignetting in Fourier Ptychographic Microscopy. And let me start right away by introducing what is Fourier Ptychographic Microscopy is, or for short, FPM. Although that you have heard about it, maybe here I will try to navigate more details. So FPM is a high resolution and wide field imaging technique where we're using a low numerical aperture objective with a large field of view. So we would like to trade some resolution, lose some resolution in favor of getting a larger field of view. And of course, this means we will have low resolved images, but we can post-process these low resolved images to get a gigapixel image. So it's really a very high resolved image. And actually, FPM is not very new. It's started already 10 years ago, but it has gained a lot of attractions, a lot of development, and as you can tell from the talks today, it's quite popular. And let's have a look at its setup and forward model. So here on the left-hand side, you can see the setup. If we start from bottom top, so we start with the LED illumination. Basically, we're sending plane waves, which interacts with our complex object. And what we record is the amplitude, or what we can see after the complex object would be this kind of amplitude and phase information. And the next is two parts, is the objective lens and the pupil, where the lens acts as a Fourier transformer. So we go from spatial to Fourier domain, and the pupil just acts as a low-pass filter. And you can see here the filtered spectrum where we're applying a pupil to the Fourier domain, to the Fourier spectrum of our object. And the last lens acts as a transformer again, where a Fourier transformer, where we go back to the spatial domain. And as you can see here, we are recording intensity, and basically we are losing the phase information. But phase information are quite important if you want to do some reconstructions of some structures. So we would like to retrieve this phase information. And one set or a group of algorithms is what we call alternating projecting. And basically, how does this work? So we have two sets. In red, this is a constraint set. And in black, this modular set is basically measurements. So we'd like to start from a random kind of measurement and hopefully apply some constraint on the measurements, and again on the pupil, and then on the measurements, and propagate and further back and forth until we end up here at the intersection. This, if we arrive at this, so we have successfully retrieved our phase. And in terms of input-output, these are basically the kind of input and output to the reconstruction algorithm. These are the low resolved images that we get. So we have multiple of these, and we would like to reconstruct the high resolved intensity and phase of these structures while maintaining a large field of view. So we get the kind of best of both worlds, the field of view as well as the resolution. Now, the motivation of our work is to have a precise FPM simulation that matches experiment. So what does this mean? Let's say that I would like to have a simulation for some optical phenomena. So I go to my computer and I try to do the best kind of modeling of our theory and implementing this. And what I will get? I will get a simulation that looks very nice, very round, symmetric, and it looks good. Now I want to confirm what I have just hypothesized, and I go to the lab, and this is what I get. So I get not a round circle, but I get a square with hard edges, and sometimes I get some kind of really funny kind of corners, which I don't fully understand. So you can guess, if I try to match my simulation to the experiment, I will get a huge gap between them. So what's in the gap? So in the gap, we have noise, of course, aberrations, and setup components imperfections. And to be to be more specific about FPM, I would focus in my talk on two sources of this mismatching. The first is the LEDs misalignments. So it is the same kind of LEDs that I mentioned before. And the second is vignetting effects. And vignetting is kind of known kind of artifact for people, for example, in photography, where you can get an image and you add some artificial vignetting and you will get nice corners. So it looks nice. But in our case, it's a challenge to the reconstruction, and we would like to solve it. So our aim is to bridge the gap between the simulation and the experiment by getting or by trying to having a more complete forward model. So we try to stretch the circle a little bit to match more the experiment. How we want to approach this? So basically, we would like to do a setup characterization where we would protect more precisely the setup parameters, more specifically this LED's positions. And by more precisely, I mean there's no heuristics. And we would like also to model the vignetting effects. So we're trying here to use the vignetting effect rather than this infamous property that we have in our setups. We would like to actually use this in our favor and turn it into kind of a probe to the setup parameters. More on this will come in a minute. So this is again our FVM setup. And as I mentioned, we send plane waves from these LEDs positions. And basically, when we shift the LED, we will get the complex spectrum of our object will also have a shift. And if we don't measure precisely the LED's position, we will have a really hard time to have a reconstruction convergence. So to give you an idea how terrible can this be, here is an example of synthetic data, which is corrupted with LED misalignment and reconstructed. And these are the results. So basically, we have different reconstruction algorithms, Gershback-Saxton, Gauss-Newton, and so on. And here on the top left, you see the relative error regarding this LED misalignment. So you can see in the intensity reconstruction, we have a relatively moderate kind of error arriving at 15% in Gershback-Saxton, worse in the phase reconstruction, where you can see we can go up to 2000% relative error. So you can see that we are losing a lot of the information due to this LED misalignment. And actually, the state-of-the-art analyses try to correct for such problem by using heuristics and numerical optimization on top. And here you can see different kind of algorithms. Here on the x-axis is iteration, y-axis is relative error. And you can see that these kind of reconstruction algorithm have a hard time to find a convergence with a few number of iterations. So for example, this Poisson-based algorithm, it takes maybe 80 or 70 iterations, and the relative error is also not small, it's around 10% or so. And in some really worst cases, you can see that it's also prone to non-conversions. For example, the solid blue here correspond to the Gershberg-Saxton, where you can see that the error is actually increasing, which prohibits the convergence of our reconstruction. The second source of this mismatching, this vignetting effects, which I mentioned before. So vignetting can be categorized in two types. The first is called natural, and this is basically the illumination fall-offs if we go towards outer zone of the image field. And this is basically a cosine to the power of 4, so it's kind of a rabbit fall-off. And the next vignetting type is called artificial, and this is just a truncations of rays due to apertures on stop. So here, let's look at this artificial vignetting. So here we have vertically these planes corresponding to the object and lens 1, lens 2, and the image. And we have two sets of ray cones. Here, if we start on the on-axis cone, you can see that it passes without any kind of vignetting because all the rays pass, and we have all the energies from here to here. It's like a map point-to-point mapping. But if we go off-axis, here we're starting to see that this lower kind of rate started to get truncated here by this edge or this upper edge. And if we go even further, this will be totally lost on our image, and we will get, as I mentioned, this darker kind of images. So these two sets of cones correspond to what we call bright and dark field images. So this is a bright field image, and this is a dark field one. And in our reconstruction algorithm, we have both of them. And the problem is that they have a different difference in their magnitude. So orders of magnitude difference. So this is one issue if you would like to find a kind of a nice convergence or a nice average between them. And the other thing is that the noise in the bright field is actually larger than the signal in the dark field. So you can see here the widths between the two kind of fields, they are relatively different. So any kind of way trying to use both of them in the algorithm blindly will definitely be very difficult for convergence. So how we want to get this more precise forward simulation? So we have two kind of modeling regimes. The first is geometrical optics. The second will be the scalar wave optics. So we'll start with geometrical optics because it's the most simple and most kind of easy to interpret and understand model. And here we're using perfect imaging with paraxial and thin lenses approximation. Again, this is our ray diagram where we have the different planes. So LED, object, objective lens, tube lens, and the image plane. And we have two colors corresponding to two different rays. In red, this is the illumination rays starting from LED. And on the for the blue one, these are the object kind of imaging. So we have both of them, and we would like to characterize our system here, not only of these distances between these different planes, but actually we would like to get the full kind of setup characterized. And by that, I mean, we would like to know the light properties of our LED array. as well as diameters, principal planes, entrance and exit pupils, etc., of our lenses in our setup. So just an example of this kind of characterization. Here is our measurement benchmark, where we try to characterize the different components. Starting with the lead characterization, we're interested not only in the central wavelengths, but we would like also to get the optical bandwidth. For the lenses, we try to look into the pupil planes, and actually it's very tricky to find these planes because manufacturers will not give you this, so you have to work hard into getting them. And for that, we use different kind of methods, Zemax files, trying to have some sketches and matching this in our experiment until we have our setup characterized. Now we have done the characterization. How can we have this in our forward modeling using geometrical optics? So first attempt is, as I said, is to work with the simplest one, geometrical optics. And again, it's the same kind of ray, except we are staying with the illumination kind of imaging. So the blue one corresponds to on-axis LED, and green is an off-axis one. And you can see here that the image that we will record is actually a circle coming from the tube lens. And basically, when you shift the LED, the circle just shifts here up. And as I mentioned, this is geometrical optics, so we don't have waves or diffraction. And our input to the simulation actually is the LED positions, the distances between all the components, the diameters of our lenses, principal planes, and the light properties. And the output would be things related to this kind of circle, which we call vignetting circle, short VC. And the first output parameter is called the diameter, which is, you can see here, it's EI. And the next output variable is MLED. So this is the lead magnification. And it's a magnification because we want to see how much shift of the circle happens here compared to when you shift the LED. And the last output is the normal kind of object magnification that you find in any microscope. So the vignetting circle, as you can see, its movement is actually a direct result of the shift in the LED plane. And we would like to see how this actually works in reality. So in our experiment, how does this look like? So this is an image from our experiment where we're trying to probe one of the resolution targets. And the first thing that you can see is that we are using a larger sensor. And basically, this is to see almost all of the vignetting circle, all of these edges. And the next thing that you do is that you take this measurement and you say, I'm interested into this kind of region. I would like to reconstruct this kind of region of interest. So you apply some crop like this red.
You have 3 minutes left.
Red box. Thank you. And if you switch to the next LED, you see that the circle starts to move, but everything inside is still bright. If we move even further, we're starting to get some vignetting. And if we get even further, we get this double vignetting. Even further, we get the dark field. So again, this is no vignetting, it's bright. This is what we call mixed field, because here we have in our crop both bright and dark regions, and of course down is the dark one. So our hypothesis is that if we can use the vignetting circle movement, if we can predict this very precise, then we can easily anticipate which proper images to be included in reconstruction. This means we don't need to manually process which ROI is good for our reconstruction or not. The other thing, we can also get the LED positions more precisely, which means more guarantee for reconstruction robustness. So we are saving resources and time. Now the results. Here we're doing 1,000 perturbations to the input parameters following a Gaussian distributions. And you can see the loss calculated as the Euclidean distances between the output parameters. And just to highlight what this looks like inside this first bin of the loss, we look at the output parameters where we see that the mean of the simulation in blue agrees with the experimental in red within uncertainties. Same for the object magnification. But what's interesting here also that for the diameter of the vignetting circle that we have agreement, still it looks pretty flat. So we don't really know what's going on. So we have to look kind of closer. And to do this, we have to upgrade our simulation to the next regime, which is scalar wave optics, where we include temporal as well as spatial coherence properties into our system. Again, we're doing 1,000 perturbations to the wavelengths within some optical wavelengths and also of the position of the LED. And we superimpose the simulations on the image plane, which you can see here on the green line. So the green line corresponds to these superposition simulations. And everything up or down, this is just a forward or backward propagation so that we can see more information into the kind of interference pattern, how it looks like. So these are just zoom pictures for this interference pattern, which I can skip. So to compare this to the measurements, we would like to look at our image and fit actually an ellipsoid, not actually a circle. And this is because in our measurement, we have some tilt in our LED, which would making this an ellipsoid. And we compare the interference pattern again across this image. And just that as a disclaimer, these are just ongoing results. So here in solid green, this is a simulation for green channel, and experiment is in dashed. And you can see that the position of the peaks agrees between simulation and experiment, although that we have still a bit of a peak height difference between them. And as another example, red, again, except for the kind of difference in the peak heights, we have a perfect or almost perfect matching between the positions of the peaks. So I come to the summary. So what we have done in our experiment is that we use the vignetting circle not as a usually done like a nuisance that we want to solve, but actually we used it as a way to probe our setup parameters, where we used a larger sensor to see better the vignetting circle. We have also performed full setup characterization to reduce the simulation setup gap. And in the simulation, we have achieved a more complete forward simulation where we extended the geometrical optic toolbox to include scalar wave optics. And hopefully the toolbox will be available on GitHub soon. And I hope I have convinced you that we are on the right track to have better matching between simulation and experiment using our vignetting model. And of course, the next step is to perform the reconstruction with the characterized setup parameter. Thank you very much, and looking forward to your comments and questions.